Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for Secure 2.0, Reshaping the Retirement Landscape. I have just a few announcements for those of you who are requesting credit. Please note that to receive CE credit, you must remain logged into the video portion of the webinar for the entire program. Logging into the audio portion only is not sufficient for CE credit. Continuing education credits are being offered for the following designations: CPE, CIMA, CPWA, CIMC, RMA, CFP, and SHRM. At the end of the webinar, we would like to request that all attendees fill out the evaluation form that will pop up. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them through the question box. At the end of the webinar, we'll answer as many questions as we can, but we want to be respectful of your schedule and end on time. If we don't get to your question today, we will follow up with you afterwards. Tomorrow, you will receive an email with a link to replay today's broadcast. Now let's get started. We are joined today by Dave Baird, National Director of TPA Markets at Pentegra. Dave has over 30 years of experience in the financial services industry. His vast degree of knowledge and enjoyment for helping advisors better assist their clients and expand their practices has made him the go-to expert for 316 fiduciary outsourcing and TPA services. Dave, I'll hand things off to you.
Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today for yet another exciting Secure 2.0 webinar. We were talking before the broadcast, and I think this is my third in the last year, maybe my fourth since the law came out. Since the statute was passed. I'm not entirely certain. And there will be more. There will be others beyond this, so hang in there. Secure 2.0 has 90 plus provisions, and they trickle in over the next 9 years, and there's always more to come. So today we have learning objectives to understand the new 401k features in particular, including emergency savings and student loan payments, starter 401ks. We're going to be aware of enhanced SIMPLE IRA features, although we here at Pentegra are not really in the SIMPLE IRA business, but we're going to touch on those a little bit and talk about Roth accounts. We're going to try to comprehend the expanded rollover options, additional distribution penalty exemptions, and RMD changes. We're going to see what we can do about understanding changes to MEPs and PEPs and group plan rules, and we're going to try to understand effective provisions of these. The course will actually be laid out as in this format: how we got here, and employer-sponsored retirement plan provisions, other plan-related provisions, other provisions, DOL, IRS homework, and then we'll summarize as best we can how we got here. This is where I forewarned Jen and others. I said, I'm going to go off script slightly, but I won't compromise our timing. This isn't new. Legislation, pension reform legislation isn't new if you've been in this business for a while. And actually, I've been in this almost 40 years. Yes, I have been over 30 years. It's almost 40 years. With ERISA, ERISA passed in 1974, and by 1978, we had our first updated language to ERISA, which is why we're here today, because that's when we got expanded clarity on 401k. Was 1978. Then in the 80s, we had TEFRA and DEFRA and RIA and TRA 86. In the 90s, we got new comparability language. We got more clarity on audits. You remember when all this started, folks, there was no small plan audit exemption. Everybody was supposed to be subject to an audit. But we got small plan audit exceptions in the 90s. We got the GUST legislation. We got GATT, G-A-T-T. We got USERRA. We got the Small Business Jobs Protection Act. We got TRA 97. In the 2000s, we got EGTRA and PPA and new cycles on our documents. So the point is, change is always going to be coming along. Secure 2.0 is an amalgamation of three separate bills, if you will. So we had the House 2954, we had Senate 4353, and then we had the EARN Act, the 70 provisions of the EARN Act, and all of this was combined, if you will. Congress successfully synthesized three bills into one act, which was named the Enhancing American Retirement, the EARN Act, I should say, was enhancing the American retirement. But it was all bundled into Secure 2.0, which followed Secure 1.0 of 2019, and signed into law on 12/29/2022. Secure 2.0 was fashioned to try to do these four things: expand plan coverage, preserve retirement income, increase retirement savings, and simplify and clarify retirement plan rules. Expanding coverage, the coverage gap being the most important thing that Congress collectively is and was concerned about at the time. So the law was passed, and we started applying the rules in 2023, and in early 2024, we got our latest guidance, Notice 2024-02, that gave us more clarity on automatic enrollment. Yet, and I'll touch on that when we get to it, we're still hoping for more to come. Modification to plan startup credits and small plan employer plans, military spousal retirement plan credits. So you can see a theme here. There's an incentive for employers to expand and provide retirement plan savings, immediate and financial incentives for contributing to a small plan. That's the what we jokingly call the Starbucks card rule. And we expanded simple limits. I'm going to skip through here a little bit. Safe harbor for corrections of employee deferral electives. We're going to talk a little bit, when we get to that slide, we're going to expand a little bit about the ease of corrections now under Secure 2.0. Optional treatment of employer matching or non-elective contributions to Roth seems to be a topic that we get people wanting to talk about. So now we're going to focus on these employer-sponsored related provisions, and we're going to go through different groups of these provisions. The top one here, Section 102, modifies the small employer plan startup credit effective for 2023. So it increases the startup credit from 50% to 100% for employers with up to 50 employees, and an additional credit for defined contribution with 50 or fewer. So we've got this percentage of the amount contributed by the employees up to $1,000 per employee that there's a credit for, and it's a credit that starts out at 100% in the first year and decreases to 75, and then 50, and then 25% in successive years. It can also apply to SEPs and Simples and 401k plans. The prior rules still apply to those plans with 50 to 100 employees, but this is in particular, again, this has to do with Congress identifying that small business in America doesn't have enough retirement, and they're very concerned about it. Section 101 required automatic enrollment. This is the one we got more clarity on this, but sadly, one particular thing was left out. So in very simple terms, plans that were adopted after the enactment of Secure 2.0 have to have an automatic contribution arrangement. If it's a plan, whether it's a single employer plan, whether it's a new plan as part of a MEP, or a PEP, it has to have automatic enrollment. Now, some of the rules have to do, some of the clarity that we were looking for has to do with plans that were pre-enactment plans. So a plan that was established before the enactment of Secure 2.0 is not required to have an automatic contribution arrangement unless, and I'm not going to dwell on this topic today, but you can reach back out to us and we'll be happy to expand on it. Unless the way the law is currently written and interpreted, unless that single employer plan that was established before Secure 2.0 joins a MEP or a PEP that was established after the enactment of 2.0, it's grandfathered. But if it joins a MEP or a PEP established after 2.0, it has to adopt an automatic contribution arrangement. We think that this wasn't intentional. We think this is an accidental byproduct of the legislation. We also think it's an accidental byproduct of the further guidance that we got in 2024-02. And we are somewhat anticipating that we might get some more clarity in the lame duck after the election. But if we don't, it's kind of an oddity in that plans established before the enactment of 2.0 are protected from having to have an automatic contribution arrangement unless they join a MEP or a PEP that was set up afterwards. It's just kind of an oddity. Tax credits. Eligible plan sponsors have two related tax credits available to them. It's the increased startup credit, which are available for a 3-year period for smaller plans, and it's the qualifying plan sponsor and the eligible employee credit, or the eligible participant credit. The first startup credit cost credit year could be the taxable year preceding, taxable year in which the plan becomes effective with respect to the employer. The point of this slide relevant to the tax credits is that if a plan was established before the enactment of the law, so let's say a plan was set up in early 2022, they're still eligible for the second and third year tax credits, even though the plan was actually established before the enactment of the law. A lot of employers are not aware of that. Youth advisors can help educate folks about these tax credits. Here's more about the startup tax credit. Plan must cover at least one non-highly compensated employee. Credit is for fees and expenses for administrative startup and employee education services. This example is actually designed to show you a plan that would not be eligible for the tax credit. They had 125 employees at the beginning of the year, establish a new plan effective 1/1/2025. They're not eligible for the credit in November 2025. They lay off 50 employees. They're still not eligible for the credit because of the way the plan, because of when the plan was set up. 2023 effective provisions. These allow small immediate financial incentives and the tax credits, and permits employers of domestic employees, nannies, if you will, to provide SEP and IRA contributions, and eliminates the compensation-based limit for non-highly compensated employees in rural electric cooperatives, if any of you work in those areas. But the main focus of this slide, or the most pertinent information, excuse me, in this slide has to do with allowing small immediate financial incentives, gift cards, if you will, for people joining a plan. This is the Starbucks card rule, if you will. But actually, the limit is anything under $250 per employee. So it can be quite liberal if an employer wants to do that. Oh, well, here's the limit on the next page. Sorry about that. Regulation permits participants to receive up to $250 as an incentive to make a deferral election. The incentive is only available for individuals who are not previously making deferrals. It is taxable to the individual, and it's not considered a match or an asset of the plan or anything like that. The military spouse credit. This was the idea behind this is that oftentimes military spouses go to work when their spouse is called up on active duty or deployed. Sometimes they may not have been working prior to that, but Congress recognized that it's not uncommon for military spouses to get a job, if you will, when their spouse is deployed. And this credit is for an employer who allows a military spouse to become immediately eligible if their plan ordinarily does not provide for immediate eligibility. And the credit, as you can see, is for each eligible participant is $200 and an additional 100% of the employer contribution not to exceed $300. The credit can be claimed before the plan is amended to qualify for the credit. We won't have amendments, folks, until 2026. So this is available now, and an employer need not worry about having a document that's specifically updated for this feature. Okay. Qualified life annuity contracts, Section 202, qualifying longevity annuity contracts, I should say. There used to be, now let's be honest, that there are not a lot of plans that have an option to invest in a qualifying longevity annuity contract. That may be changing in the future, especially in the educational world. Many of those plans have annuity contracts and often have QLACs. And I am seeing more and more of them. I saw an ad on TV. I can't remember the record keeper, but there was a well-known national record keeper that had an ad that had something to do with lifetime income, and that's kind of what we're talking about here in a QLAC is the means by which lifetime income is secured. So the idea here is that these used to have a restriction on the amount that could be devoted. It was 25%, and that repeals that 25% limit and allows up to $200,000, which will be indexed, of an account balance to be used to purchase a QLAC if, in fact, the custodian and record keeper provides for QLACs in their program. Again, the idea under 202 is that Congress is concerned that people are not saving enough, not participating enough, and that they'll outlive their retirement. So that's why 202 was included. Section 204 eliminates the penalty on partial annuitization with RMDs when a retirement account held an annuity, and again, not many do or did. There was a challenge with annuities and RMDs, and that's now been removed with 204 of Secure 2.0. And Section 301, recovery of retirement plan overpayment. If a participant who receives a termination distribution or a death proceeds distribution or a total distribution from their account, if there's an inadvertent overpayment, the penalty for not going and recouping that is what we're talking about here. That's been removed. The plan fiduciaries may proceed with this without trying to recollect inadvertent. And sometimes, folks, we were talking about pennies. There were times, especially with lump sum distributions from defined benefit plans, we were oftentimes talking about pennies, and it was quite a challenge to try to go back and recoup those if there was an overpayment. Section 305 expands the Employee Plans Compliance Resolution System, or EPCRS, because we love our acronyms. So when a plan is broken, EPCRS dictates how it can be fixed. And what in particular, what has been expanded is the ability to self-correct errors, and it's quite expansive now. The ability to fix things that are broken without having to go through a voluntary correction program, without having to raise the flag and say to the IRS, "We're sorry, we made a mistake. Here's the fee, here's the penalty," so on. Now, if the correction involves a contribution, this self-correction doesn't mean you don't have to make the contribution. But self-correction, a lot of little things. I'll tell you the most common thing we run across, and I'm talking about daily, folks, because of the volume of new business that we do, are unsigned documents. We get unsigned documents constantly. Well, prior to Secure 2.0 and Section 305, an unsigned document wasn't valid, and it meant a correction program and a minimum like $1,500 fee to the IRS to do a VCP, and that just didn't make sense. When in fact, oftentimes the plan is being operated properly. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just simply that it wasn't signed. Other little errors, here and there. So long as they're not violating an anti-cutback rule, a lot of them can be corrected through a self-correction procedure now. And again, self-correction doesn't mean you don't do anything. It means you essentially do everything you would otherwise do if you were correcting the document, but with a VCP, but you don't file. This next box here, this has to do with 457B plans. Section 305 eliminates the first day of the month election requirement for governmental 457B plans. We, Pentegra, don't spend a lot of time with 457B plans, in particular governmental plans. Doesn't mean we don't work in them, but we don't do a lot of them. And it simply allows changes to deferral elections at any time prior to the date that the compensation being deferred is available. It doesn't require that they wait until the first of the month. Over here is Section 312. Employee may allow on self-certifying deemed hardship distribution if certain conditions are met. This is a big one. This makes everybody's life easier. Most of the record keepers that you are familiar with and that you work with, most of them are now in sync with this. If not, they'll have it operational very shortly. Makes everybody's life easier. We use the IRS hardship rules, and so the employee is self-certifying that their hardship request meets one of those IRS specified hardships. Over here, this is Section 317, permits the retroactive first-year elective deferrals for sole proprietors. So if you are, if it's, well, let's say it's May, and you want to, and you have a sole proprietor that wants to set up a salary deferral plan for last year. They have not filed their taxes yet for 2023. Used to be that they could only set up a profit sharing plan. Now, if they have If they have employees, this doesn't work. But if it's a sole proprietor plan, then they can set up the deferral retroactively. Section 320 of SECURE eliminates unnecessary plan requirements related to unenrolled participants. This has to do with not having to provide notices for unenrolled but otherwise eligible participants on a more frequent than annual basis. So once a year, we still have to provide notices to participants who are eligible but have chosen not to enroll in a plan. To be perfectly honest, most notices are delivered electronically, preferably electronically through work email. And if we have an employee's work email, whether they're enrolled or not, it's actually harder to carve them out than it is to simply deliver it to everybody. So we have a tendency to deliver to everybody electronically where possible. Section 308, sitting next to it here, this has to do with extends the age 50 rule for early distributions for qualified public safety employees to private sector firefighters. So again, qualified public safety employees had the ability to take early distributions beginning at age 50, and that now extends to firefighters as well. Section 328, again, not something that gets utilized very often in most of our worlds. $3,000 public safety officer distribution for health and long-term care insurance. So if a plan covers public safety officers and if it provides for the purchase of health and long-term care insurance, then this repealed the requirement that the plan make direct payments to pay those premiums, which was challenging. Section 329 here in the middle extends age 50 public safety officer and distribution penalty exception for those at least 25 years of service. And keeping with that public safety officer rule, again, these are sections of SECURE that were expanded. Most of you probably don't work in these areas, but Section 330 on the right-hand side, early distribution penalty exception, it extends the exception to the 10% tax to correct officers who are employees of state and local governments. In other words, they're able to take that without the penalty. Optional treatment, Section 604, optional treatment of employer matching or non-elective contributions as Roth contributions. Here we've gotten we've as an industry, we've somewhat pushed this out because not many record keepers are ready to do this yet. Some are getting there, but this is very simply allowing a participant to say, I want my employer contribution to be Roth rather than traditional pre-tax. Now, if the plan allows for in-plan Roth conversions, they can do a once-a-year conversion anyway. This would allow it to be treated as Roth every payroll cycle, so there's probably some scalability there on the taxes where they're paying them on a per payroll basis rather than a once a year. The challenge also is with payroll companies. Not a lot of payroll companies are ready to administer that part of it. In the middle of 606, enhancing retiree health benefits and pension plans. This has to do with defined benefit plans, and it extends an employer's ability to use assets from overfunded pension plans to pay retiree health and life insurance benefits. And if you happen to be working on the far right-hand side in the Native American tribal retirement plan world, tribal courts and domestic relations orders that simply put DROs can now be qualified by a tribal court. It doesn't have to be an otherwise court of U.S. statute. The Rothification, again, this is how Congress pays for things that they give back. This has to do, again, with treating employer contributions as Roth, converted amounts, 1099 issued for reporting the taxable amounts for the year allocated. Amounts are recharacterized as designated Roth amounts within the plan. Again, the point being that there is no magic mechanism for treating employer contributions as Roth on a per payroll contribution basis. It's going to be a conversion in the plan. It's going to be a 1099 issued, things like that. It's not there just doesn't seem to be a way yet to do it on a per payroll basis. Section 201, we're going to remove required minimum distribution barriers of life annuities. Again, most of you don't work with plans that have life annuities involved with them, but Section 201 removes the distribution barriers for RMDs that have to do with life annuities. Section 302, reduction in the excise tax on certain accumulations in a qualified plan. This is from 50% to 25%. This has to do with failure to take an RMD timely, and if it's corrected timely, and timely means within the year after the year in which the distribution should have occurred, then it drops further, even down to 10%. But the initial reduction is from 50 to 25%. I actually had something like this that I had to help with. I have a close friend who's 92-year-old father. His stockbroker didn't send him, or they did not issue the RMD for 2023. And he said, "What do we do?" And I said, "You know what? I just happen to know where that information is." So I looked it up and I said, "Here's the deal. He can correct it now, and the penalty is, there's a penalty." Of course, they were mad at the advisor, and I said, "It's not the advisor's fault. It's actually the IRA participant's job every year to request it. It's not typically automated." At any rate, it's reduced from 50 to 25% and can be further reduced to 10%. Section 311 over here on the right limits repayments of qualified birth and adoption distributions for 3 years. We are seeing more qualified birth or adoption distributions, QBADs. We're not seeing many folks wanting to repay them, but we are seeing more QBAD distribution requests. So be aware of that's something that people are talking about as they have children and adopt. Section 323, we get an exception to the equal period payments for rollovers or exchanges of an annuity. Again, not a lot of folks working in annuities that satisfies an RMD, but it occasionally comes up. Section 326, an exception to penalty on early distributions from qualified plans for individuals with terminal illnesses. So if a participant has a terminal illness, then they can request a distribution, and the early distribution penalty is waived. Section 107, an increase in age for required beginning date for RMDs. It increased to age 73 starting on 1/1/23, and it will further increase to age 75 by 2033. Section 337, we have a modification of the RMD rules for special needs trusts. This has to do with a distribution to if a beneficiary of a plan or IRA is disabled and a special needs trust exists for the beneficiary, then the trust may provide for a charitable organization as the remainder beneficiary. So it doesn't have to be that special needs person. So let's say if they're in a nursing home that's operated by a charitable organization, the beneficiary can be that person and or the named in the trust or that organization. Section 313 it adjusts the limitations for excise tax on excess contributions and failures to take an RMD. Provides that a 3-year period of limitation begins when the taxpayer files for an individual tax return for the beginning of the violation. And this somewhat trails back to what we were talking about a minute ago with distributions. That there's a extended period of time to correct. Section 331 on the right-hand side here. Special rules qualified for qualified federal declaration disasters. You remember during COVID, we had disaster relief, special disaster relief, and it had to be passed by Congress, allowed up to $100,000 distribution. Now it's permanently in here, and it's part of the rules, and it's not. You can withdraw up to $22,000 for a federally declared disaster. Quiz time. I've been rushing, sorry folks, to get to this. I want to make sure that we get this in. The penalty for failure to take an RM. Whoops, I'm sorry. You go ahead, Jen.
Oh no, I was just going to say the poll's now open.
The polls are now open. Penalty for failure to take an RMD is changing from 50% to what percentage?
Polls will be open for about another 10 seconds. The poll is now closed. We had 25% or 88% choose 25%, with 12% of voters choosing 20%. Back to you, Dave, for the answer.
Okay, well, sorry. Well, the answer was 25%. And I may have confused some of you with that one. I said it's currently 50%. The 50% was reduced to 25%. It can be further reduced from 25 to 10% if it's corrected timely. And timely means within the year after the year that the failure occurred. Let's keep moving on here. Section 117, contribution limits for simple IRAs and simple 401ks. Those are increased. We're not going to dwell on that section here. The other is Section 304, updating the dollar limits for mandatory distributions. We use mandatory distributions to pull or swipe out small balances in a plan at the end of the year, and that reduces the number of people that we have to send notices to throughout the next year. It increased from 5,000 to 7,000 was the limit. So, Section 121, starter 401ks or 403B plans for employers with no retirement plan. These are a little interesting. These are kind of like simple IRAs in that they don't require administration, if you will, permits an employer without a retirement plan to offer a starter 401k or safe harbor 403B plan. The plan must require that all employees are automatically enrolled at a deferral rate of 3 to 15%. Deferrals are limited to the annual IRA contribution limit, so $6,500 in 2023 plus $1,000 catch up, if you will. We don't see a lot of interest in those, but nonetheless, perhaps in some states where there are state mandated retirement plans, the starter 401k or 403b might be an alternative that an employer would want to choose rather than a state mandated plan. To the right, Section 120, the exemption for certain automatic portability transactions following cash outs. This has to do with cashing out of $1,000 or more to default IRAs permits the retirement plan service providers to automatically transfer participants' default IRAs established in the connection with a distribution from a former employer's plan into the participant's new employer plan. Frankly, so this is, frankly, the issue with this is that this requires some connectivity between former and future providers, if you will. If I'm an employee and I'm terminating and I've got this money in there and my employer wants to automatically move it to an IRA, or that IRA provider then automatically move it to my new employer, they have to actually know about the new employer. There are some speed bumps with 120. Frankly, most of the folks I've chatted with would prefer to just simply, many get away from cashing out $1,000 or less balances because checks just float around out there sometimes. So they roll them to an IRA, and yes, the IRA provider might want to automatically move them to a new employer's retirement plan, but it's a bit problematic. The bugs aren't worked out on this one here on 120. This one as well, Section 127, optional emergency savings accounts for non-highly compensated employees. So this is not an extra hardship distribution or not a new distribution option. This would be an employer who says, my employees don't have enough cash available for an emergency, so I want to set up something inside our 401k or 403b plan that allows them to automatically save up to $2,500 as an emergency savings account, in addition to whatever they're contributing into the 401k plan. So imagine this is an employer saying, I know you're contributing to the 401k. I'm going to make you also contribute to this emergency savings account. And just so that you have enough money for emergencies. The other thing, not a lot of record keepers are ready to do this, and so we have not seen a lot of traction in that optional benefit. Section 310 doesn't have a lot to do with most of you, but it's kind of a big win for us. It allows us to provide for an alternative test for top heavy. We've always been able to exclude, folks who are not eligible under statutory rules. So, real simple. Let's say an employer has a plan that has a 3 months eligibility, but remember they could have 12 months eligibility. Well, we've always been able to test both ways. We've been able to test the plan based on 3 months eligibility, or we've been able to test the plan based on 12 months eligibility, even though the plan doesn't have 12 months eligibility. we could do that for ADP and ACP and 401A4 and stuff like that, but we couldn't do it for top heavy. Now we can use that alternative test for top heavy if we want to. Section 110, treatment of qualified student loan payments as elective deferrals for purposes of matching contributions. A lot of conversation about this, a lot of people interested in this. Know that almost none of the payroll providers or record keepers are ready to do this on a daily basis. Right now, if an employer wants this in their plan, it will be a year-end true-up. So in other words, at the end of the year, the employee will self-certify that they made student loan payments during the year, and they'll report that to their employer. And their employer will report that to their TPA, and the TPA will determine the amount of the match, and the match will be deposited into the plan in a timely manner. So that's the way this will work for now. Someday you may see a connectivity between payroll providers and record keepers to do this on a daily basis, but doesn't exist today. Section 342, this has to do with defined benefit plans. Pension plans must provide information to compare in-plan benefits versus lump sum distributions. Section 325, designated Roth accounts, eliminates the RMDs from designated Roth accounts for plan participants. Section 327 on this slide, surviving spouse election to be treated as an employee. Most record keepers are ready to do that one right now. Same with the Roth, the RMDs from designated Roth accounts. Most of your major record keepers are ready to treat a surviving spouse if it's to their benefit to elect to be treated as the deceased employee for RMD rules. Most of the time, the employees or surviving spouses roll the money over anyway out of the plan, but not always. Section 350, safe harbor time for corrections of employee elective deferrals. We have a grace period now of 9.5 months after the plan year end to correct in a penalty-free manner reasonable errors related to automatic enrollment and escalation features. If you might remember that automatic enrollment prior to Secure 2.0, if there was an error, if people were not automatically enrolled when they were supposed to be automatically enrolled, it was expensive. It was a big deal. Now we've got a longer grace period to correct those failures. Under Section 115, withdrawals for certain emergency expenses, we have a broader exception to the 10% early distribution penalty. One distribution is permissible per year up to $1,000. Again, Secure 2.0, Congress wanted us to save more, but they want more access to it as well. Section 603, this is the Rothification of catch-up deferrals for people with $145,000 or more in income, and that was pushed out to plan years beginning after 12/31/2025. Again, that was one where we all came to Congress and said, we don't know how to do it. This has to do with that notice 2023-62. It provided for further guidance on that 2-year catch-up rule for Roth. This is where we got that guidance in the middle of 2023 last year. And 2024-35 offered guidance for RMDs for 2024. Final RMD regulations will apply no earlier than 2025 is the, in the nutshell of that one. And here we are at quiz time again.
The polls are open.
Emily, there you go. Got the poll open?
Yes.
New 401k plans must include an auto enrollment feature after what year? 2022, 2023, or 2024? Or never?
The poll will remain open for another 10 seconds for anyone who has not yet voted. The poll is now closed. We had 77% vote for 2024, 18% vote for 2023, and 5% vote for 2022. Dave, you to the answer.
The answer is 2024. I'm going to keep moving because we've got to get to at least the next polling question. Section 109, higher catch-up limit. This is that fun one. Ages 60, 61, 62, 63 increases the catch-up limit. The record keepers are by and large ready to do this. I don't know about all of the payroll providers. So if an employee simply says, I want to do 100% and I want to do the maximum catch-up, some payroll providers recognize whether they're 60, 61, 62, or 63 and eligible for the higher catch-up limit. Not all do. I would say work with your clients and check with their payroll provider. 125 reduces the 3-year eligibility rule to 2 years for long-term part-time employees. I wish this was actually earlier in the deck. We don't have time to cover this. Long-term part-time, I could do an entire hour on long-term part-time employees and how the rules work. Suffice it to say that if a plan excludes part-time employees, unless of course they satisfy a year of service, which has always been 12 consecutive months and 1,000 hours. Now they have to look back and see if they had any employees who worked 500 hours or more. Under Secure 1.0, it was in the prior 3 years, in each of the 3 prior years. Secure 2.0, it's under both of the 2 prior years. Those folks then have to be allowed to defer. If they're otherwise excluded as a part-timer from the employer contribution, that's fine. But if they don't satisfy the full-time eligibility but satisfy long-term part-time rules, they will have to be eligible to defer. And so those are extensive rules. Yeah, this gives a little broader definition of what I just said. You'll be able to read this. And again, you can reach back to us. This is a complicated one. We spend a lot of time on this. Section 334, long-term care contracts purchased with retirement plan distributions. This permits retirement plan to distribute up to $2,500 per year to pay premiums for certain specified long-term care contracts without it being exempt, and they're exempt then from the 10% early distribution penalty. Section 338 is another part of the paper statements. This has to do with DB plans and DC plans. We said communication can be waived for people that are not participating. This has to specifically do with participant statements. 338 does. 309, first responders, exclusion of certain disability-related first responder treatment payments. We won't spend time on that. Again, I don't want to delay you from the next polling question. The Savers Match, Section 103 on the right here, this repeals and replaces the credit for IRA and retirement plan contributions with a federal matching contribution deposited to a taxpayer's IRA or retirement plan. Matches 50% of the IRA up to $2,000. Match phases out at $41,000 and $71,000 in case of joint filers. and it's effective for tax years beginning after 2026. How that's going to happen, how the federal government is going to actually make those deposits, yet to be determined. Mid-year simple terminations. Again, this is one you might want to reach back to us about. This is a kind of a big deal. I can't tell you for how many years we had advisors and their clients contacting us in March, April, May, June. We have a simple plan. We want to put away more. How can we get rid of it? How can we change it from a simple plan to a 401k plan? Now we can do that as long as the 401k plan is a safe harbor plan. So we can change that simple IRA to a safe harbor 401k mid-year. There are certain rules. It is a little tricky. Again, you might want to reach back to your Pentegra representative. We can arrange for a call, especially if an employer, sometimes you have employers, business owners who max out their simple IRA contributions early in the year, just like they might want to max out their 401k. In the transition year, it can be a little tricky to determine how much they can contribute to the new 401k once they have terminated the simple, if in fact they have maxed out already their deferrals in the simple. But we can go over that separately. And here we are, quiz time again.
All right, starting in 2030.
Thank you, Jen. Starting in 2033, RMDs must commence by what age? I know that was quite a while ago when we covered that in this, but the good news is, remember, the rules are that you have to answer the questions. It doesn't say you have to answer them correctly.
All right, the poll will be open for about another 10 seconds for anyone who has not voted.
I think the polling question should be, what year did Dave start in the retirement plan business?
All right, the poll is now closed. We had 88% of you vote for 75, 8% voted for 72, 4% for 59.5, and no one for 65. Back to you, Dave, for the answer.
The answer is D, 75. Let's see here. PEPs may designate a named fiduciary other than the employer to collect contributions. We do a lot in the MEP and PEP business, and we were doing that before the reg came out, but we anticipated that it would. MEPs and PEPs can include 403Bs. We'll keep going here. Section 128, 403B plans and group trust can allow for CITs and ETFs, except that securities law hasn't caught up with it yet, so it's not available yet in 403B world. Hardship rules for 403Bs now match hardship rules for 401Ks. What is here that is interesting? $332. You can replace a simple IRA with a simple 401k or other 401k plan that requires mandatory employer contributions during the year. Jen, you'll have to warn me when time is up. I think I've got
about 1 minute.
Oh, I have about 1 minute?
Okay. Yes, 2:59.
Body tables. Let's just see here. We actually have about 10 more slides, but you guys can look at them at your leisure in the next few days. We got time for one more quiz. True or false? Notice 2024-02 changed the amendment deadline for private sector qualified plans 2026.
All right, the poll's open. All right.
We'll send you some Pentegra swag. we'll try to wrangle some Pentegra if you answer this one correctly.
All right, the poll will be open for just a few more seconds. All right, the poll is closed. 80% chose true, while 20% chose false. Back to you, Dave, for the answer.
Oh, so yeah, you know what? I went past the answer. It's deadline. Change the amendment deadline. The answer is true. I'm sorry. I went too far, and then I couldn't get my slide back. Sorry. The answer is true. Okay. Sorry we didn't cover everything. But again, reach back to your Pentegra contact, and we'll get you this, and we'll answer your questions. And Jen, I'll leave it to you.
Great. Thank you, Dave. And thank you, everyone who attended today's webinar. Any questions we did not get to today, we will follow up with you separately. As a reminder, please complete the survey questions that will pop up on your screen in just a minute. Everyone have a great rest of your day.